Chronic granulomatous disease, abbreviated CGD, is an immunodeficiency characterized by a defect in NADPH oxidase, resulting in a failure to kill pathogens effectively. While CGD is high yield, it can be hard to keep it straight from the other immunodeficiencies. But take it easy. We've got you covered with our visual mnemonic for CGD. For this scene, we're headed down to the American South. That's right, down south to Grandma's. Like a true Southerner, Grandma's always sitting on the porch. You might even say that she is chronically sitting on the porch. By the way, this chronically sitting grandma is our recurring symbol for chronic granulomatous disease. You know, grandma for granulomatous in chronic granulomatous disease. Recall that granulomas are a histological finding, describing a core with macrophages surrounded by lots of lymphocytes. Granulomas develop in the skin and lungs in CGD. And while the exact mechanism for granulomas is complicated, I like to think of it this way. In CGD, our immune system fails to kill pathogens, so we do the next best thing. Wall it up into a granuloma. We'll talk about why our body fails to kill pathogens next. Just sit tight. Another reason Grandma likes to sit on the porch, she needs a cane to get around. She keeps her cane handy for when she needs to get up. The cane here is our recurring symbol for immunodeficiency. You know, since immunodeficiency means a weakened immune system, and a cane is for a weakened person, like Grandma. We'll cover the details of how CGD weakens the immune system next. Hey Grandma, we've talked about this. You really got to stop smoking that pipe. Nicotine is already bad enough without that rusty old pipe. By the way, this lit, rusty nicotine pipe will remind you of the defective enzyme in CGD, NADPH oxidase. Get it? Nicotine for the nicotinamide in NAD, with the pipe for the letter P. Plus, this nicotine pipe is lit to help you remember that we're talking about NADPH, the high-energy or lit form of NADP. Finally, this rust represents oxidase, since rust is just a form of oxidation, right? So Grandma smoking this rusty pipe is our symbol for NADPH oxidase, which is defective in CGD. So we know NADPH oxidase is implicated, but what does this enzyme do anyway? You should check out our video on the neutrophil respiratory burst for more, but here's the short version. NADPH oxidase is crucial in the respiratory burst of neutrophils, a process that creates reactive oxygen species to kill pathogens. Specifically, NADPH oxidase uses oxygen to create superoxide free radicals. These free radicals and other reactive oxygen species then go on to kill pathogens. Thus, defective NADPH oxidase means impaired ROS production, impaired respiratory burst, and ultimately impaired killing of pathogens. Patients with CGD are particularly susceptible to certain types of pathogens, which we'll discuss next. Like any other grandma, our grandma has a special weak spot for her cat that she's always petting. In fact, you could even say Grandma is particularly susceptible to her cat. Grandma's susceptibility to her cat will remind you that in CGD, patients are susceptible to catalase-positive organisms. You should review microbiology yourself, but common catalase-positive bugs to know include Staph aureus, E. coli, and Aspergillus. Now that we know people with CGD are susceptible to catalase-positive bugs, let's talk about why this happens. Recall that NADPH oxidase is just the first step of the respiratory burst, and the superoxide it makes is eventually turned into hydrogen peroxide and bleach, which are all toxic to pathogens. When people with CGD get infected by catalase-negative bugs, the host immune system can get its hands on a small amount of hydrogen peroxide made by mechanisms independent of NADPH oxidase, and use it to create reactive oxygen species to fight off the infection. However, when infected by catalase-positive bugs, this method fails because catalase's job is to break down hydrogen peroxide before the host immune system can use it. Therefore, catalase-positive organisms survive in CGD and go on to cause severe infections. These infections are usually skin infections or pneumonia, and Staph aureus is the most common cause. Now that we've covered the pathophysiology of CGD, let's talk about who gets the disease. For that, let's turn our attention to the family heirloom around Grandma's neck, her cross necklace. Remember, Grandma lives down south, right in the heart of the Bible Belt. We'll use this cross necklace to remind us that the X-linked recessive form of CGD is most common. If you know your genetics, this X-linked recessive pattern means that males are most commonly affected. Before we close, let's talk about a few tests used to give a diagnosis of CGD. Aside from attending church, Grandma doesn't have much to do out here but sit on her porch and watch the road for visitors. This road is our symbol for the dihydrorhodamine test that is used to diagnose CGD. Dihydrorhodamine is oxidized by hydrogen peroxide to rhodamine, which is fluorescent. In CGD, the dihydrorhodamine does not fluoresce, since defective NADPH oxidase means that there is less superoxide and therefore less hydrogen peroxide around to oxidize the dihydrorhodamine. Whoa, did you see that car on the road? It's got blue nitro coming out of the exhaust. That blue nitro is our last symbol and will help you remember the nitro blue tetrazolium test. Nitro blue tetrazolium turns from yellow to blue in the presence of reactive oxygen species from neutrophils. In CGD, this test stays yellow since the neutrophils can't make oxygen radicals. While this test is older and not as frequently used as dihydrorhodamine today, you may still see it on test day as a way to diagnose CGD. Alright, we're done here. Let's wrap up and bring Grandma inside. Chronic granulomatous disease, or CGD, is an immunodeficiency that is caused by a defective NADPH oxidase. As a result, neutrophils cannot generate reactive oxygen species to effectively kill pathogens through their respiratory burst. Patients with CGD are particularly susceptible to catalase-positive pathogens, which include Staph aureus, E. coli, and Aspergillus. The most common form of CGD is X-linked recessive. Therefore, most CGD patients are male. The dihydrorhodamine and nitro-blue tetrazolium tests are used to diagnose CGD. And that's it. Let's see if that blue nitro guy wants to give us a ride back to town.